2/3/2020, and this video is going to be about another Elijah analysis. When I was doing the second Elijah analysis, a light bulb went off and I did a little investigating and I realized what I thought is more than likely the way it's going to be. And also the fact that the coronavirus, which I also mentioned a long time ago for everybody to watch, it's amazing me how it is bringing the world to a standstill. And of course, the timing is not a coincidence. It's as if the world is being brought to a standstill because the Messiah is about to be crowned. So all the rat race, the nonsense, the distractions, the entertainment, it's all being brought to a standstill. And when you look at it from the natural, it's completely irrational. A little virus that barely does anything to a healthy person, and they're stopping everything because of it. I mean, a 105-year-old woman overcame it in a couple days. So when you look at it from the natural, it's not rational how they're shutting everything down. Yes, it is a little more contagious than the flu, but it's just not rational. But when you look at the timing, that we just finished the 120th Jubilee and we just entered the 121st Jubilee on 3/18, then it makes a lot more sense that this more than likely is all occurring, so that when the time comes for the open door to occur and for the Messiah to be crowned, everybody will be still and know who the Most High King is. So we'll start with the date. So on 3/18 was the first day of the first month. So March 17th was the final day of the 120th Jubilee. And like we see in Genesis 6, that the Almighty will not strive with flesh forever, that the length of days will be 120 Jubilees, which is 6,000 years. Okay. So we transitioned into the 6,000th year on 3/18, first day of the first month. Okay, then the equinox was on 3/20. So now, today's is the 6th day of the first month of the first year of the first week of the 121st Jubilee, which is the 6,000th year, 3/23/2020. Okay. And the Jubilee count began when Adam was transformed from caveman into made in the image of the Almighty. And we know that date because of the Revelation 12 signs, which is the Genesis 3 sign and the Revelation 12 sign. They're connected. But this is from September 23rd, 3974 to, I believe it would be the summer of 73 BC. So we know by the sign, the fact that this is when the fall of man occurred. The original sins, the sin from heaven and the sin from earth, occurred in 3973 BC. And Adam was in the Garden of Eden for 7 years, 1 week. So we just subtract that and we get 3980 BC is when the Almighty transformed the caveman into Adam, made in his image. And then when you add 6,000 years to 3980 BC, we get this year that just began on 3/18. So, the timing in reference to Elijah. Okay. Now, I believe we can understand where we are currently via the life of Elijah. Because the end time Elijah, the end time anointed ruler, it's for the end time, the end of the final generation. Okay? So, the last Elijah video, we were talking about how Elijah allowed the false prophets to go first. Alright, he allowed them to take their best shot. Now, after they failed, Elijah mocked them and made fun of them. And then he basically told them to try again. Maybe their God was sleeping. Maybe he was out for a trip. So anyway, the false prophets made one final attempt. And it says that they started cutting themselves, injuring themselves in one final attempt to defeat Elijah. Alright? And I believe that that's what this time right now represents, because I believe the coronavirus was released by evil entities, evil people. And basically, they're willing to bring about massive destruction. And of course, it affects them because $25 trillion being wiped away in a couple weeks affects everybody, not just President Trump or America, but it affects the whole world. So they're injuring themselves. And that's what I believe the coronavirus is representing in this time, in reference to Elijah. The evil entities released the coronavirus on purpose in China because China was meant to replace America as the financial hub of the New World system, financial system. That's why sometimes somewhere around the late 70s, early 80s, they started moving manufacturing out of America to China because that was meant to be the new hub for the new system when they decided to transition it, which they were going to do if Hillary won. Their plan was to start a war, basically a fake war, but it would become reality with probably Russia, and that would bring the world financial system to a collapse, and then they can blame it on the war and then institute their reset, because a fiat system usually only lasts about 50 years. A fiat system based on credit. So, because they didn't get Hillary, or they didn't get somebody that they control, instead the Messiah got his guy in there, and they are systematically undoing everything that the enemy has built. And it's amazing to see, to be honest with you. So, they started it in China, which is the headquarters, was supposed to be the headquarters of their future financial hub. And because they knew that it would cause a lot of financial havoc being released in China, because a lot of things are manufactured in China. And as we've seen, China basically shut down about 60 million people in a short period of time and brought manufacturing to a standstill over there. But my point in saying all this is that they did this, and it's hurting themselves, and it's their attempt to defeat President Trump, because they know their days are numbered. This is the final stand. When Michael takes the final stand, as Daniel 12 says, when he takes the final stand, this is it. They know their time is numbered. And they're not going to put their hands up and say, throw the handcuffs on. They're going to fight to the bitter end. So, like I said, I believe the coronavirus is representing the false prophets of Baal cutting themselves in that final attempt to defeat Elijah. And this is what it says. Okay. Alright. Ready. Okay, so. Alright. So at about noon, Elijah mocked them And this was just where he was making fun of them. Okay. And then they went berserk. They cried with a loud voice, cut themselves with swords and lances until the blood gushed out of them. And then midday passed, and it was time for the evening sacrifice. But there was no voice, no one answered, no one paid attention. They failed. Their plan failed. Okay. And then here's where the light bulb went on when I was doing the last Elijah video. I said, okay. Elijah spoke directly to the people. Come near to me. So all the people came near to him. He repaired the altar of the Almighty, which had been torn down. He took the 12 stones, according to the number of tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of the Almighty had come, saying, Israel shall be your name. So with the stones he built an altar in the name of the Almighty, and he made a trench around the altar, large enough to hold 2 measures of seed. Okay. Then this is where the light bulb went on. At the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice. Right there. Okay. Now, when you look into the Hebrew for this phrase, it's actually talking about burnt. Okay. And then when you look at the Hebrew phrase for this, it's talking about a sacrifice. So what this whole phrase is saying, it's in the Hebrew, it's saying at the time of the burnt offering. Now, that right there is a clue, I believe, of the timing of the open door. Okay, because like we talked about in the other Elijah, that when the fire comes down, when you research the fire coming down in other parts of Scripture, the door in heaven, in New Jerusalem, opens. Okay? And I believe that this is a clue for the open door, to the timing. Because when the fire comes down, and it says it licks up the sacrifice, all of it, I believe that that's a clue of when the open door occurs and the wise virgins get raptured up, cut off. Alright? Now, when is this evening sacrifice? Excuse me, when is the burnt sacrifices? Because when it talks about the restoration here, Ahab and Jezebel brought in false religion. So basically, Israel was not doing what the Almighty commanded. So they weren't keeping the Sabbath. They weren't keeping the holy days, the feasts, etc. They weren't doing the commandments. Alright? So that's why this had to be restored here. Because they weren't doing it. And that's what Elijah is doing when he challenges the false prophets. He's saying to Israel, if the false prophets, if their God is God, then let their God answer by fire. But if the Almighty answers by fire, then serve him. And then we all know that the Almighty answered Elijah with fire, and then consumed the whole thing. All right. So, when is this burnt offering? It's unleavened bread. Basically, each day of unleavened bread, there's a burnt offering in the evening, and the first night is like the main night. Okay. So I believe that Elijah, this phrase is showing us the timing of the open door. Okay. Which would be at the time of Passover, the Passover pilgrimage, which is what we've been saying for a couple years now. All right. Now, I'm going to go over real quick about the rehearsals of the open door in heaven, because just in case I don't get the 7,000 year timeline out before it all gets crazy. But the rehearsals that show the open door, the timing of the open door, I believe is the days of Noah, which are the days of remembrance, which are specific days. It's not talking about just the whole time of Noah. It's specific days, and the book of Jubilees shows it to us. The new moon of the first month, the new moon of the third month, the new moon... No. New moon of the first, new moon of the fourth, new moon of the seventh, new moon of the 10th. But as we went over in past videos, it's actually the 10th day, because the new moon on the first day of the first, or excuse me, the new moon of the first month, when that occurred back in the time of Noah, it was on the 10th day, and it got locked in place because the Almighty had it written in the tablets of New Jerusalem as to honor Noah. So, and then the setup is the Daniel 7. I kept looking until thrones were set up. Okay. And when you look into the Hebrew, this isn't plural. It's I beheld till the throne was set up. Now, King James has it way wrong. Okay. I kept looking until the throne was set up. The Ancient of Days took his seat. All right. See, his throne, singular. Okay. And then the thousands of the myriads and myriads standing, then they sit. I don't think they're actually thrones. I think they're more like more like how the senators and congressmen and stuff like that, how they have seats around the podium, similar to that. Okay, so this is the setup. All the rehearsals, all the prophecies, it's about this right here. When the Almighty takes his seat and then gives his son the crown, which is right here. After the Messiah is presented to him. And like we went over, 9 and 10 and 13 and 14 is Revelation 4 to 5 and 6, 1 to 2. Okay. That's what this is all about. The setup is about when the Almighty takes his throne, sits on his throne, and he gives the crown to his son. And then his son goes forth, conquering and to conquer, to put the enemies under his feet. And then once he has the complete victory, he gives it back to the Father. And that's when all things are made new, cleansed. So, the other place in Scripture where it talks about this rehearsal is the tabernacle in the wilderness. And the tabernacle in the wilderness is set up in the first day of the first month. However, I believe that there's a strong possibility that that's not the first day of the first month, that's a translation error, and that it's actually the 10th day of the first month, just like the days of Noah. Just like when the lamb is chosen for Passover. Because the throne is set up 10th day of the first month. And then Aaron and his sons were consecrated for 7 days. And then they were presented to the Almighty in the tabernacle, the tent, in the wilderness. And that represents, Aaron represents the Messiah, the high priest, and then the sons represent the elders, the wise virgins. And that's what the rehearsal's for. Revelation 4 and 5. Okay? And when you go by that interpretation, so the 10th day is when the throne is set up. Then 7 days later would be the 17th, which is when Aaron and the priests, his sons, are presented in the tent after it was set up, which is a dress rehearsal for the Messiah, the high priest, the most high priest, and the elders, the wise virgins, as the courts. And that coincides with his resurrection and the first fruits of the barley ritual that begins at sunset. The first fruits of the barley is when they made the pilgrimage to Jerusalem, which is a rehearsal for the first rapture to New Jerusalem. And they presented their first fruits of barley and their lamb to the priests. All the males, the male Israelites. But that was just rehearsals for the real thing, which is Revelation 4 and 5. Because we see here in Revelation 4, in the interlinear, it says, "Immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne, singular, was set." See, it even uses the same term, was set. And it talks about the Almighty, and then he's surrounded by the wise virgins, the elders, which is the court. The witnesses to the crowning, the first portion of the kingdom, the body. They have to be there for the Messiah to receive his crown, because otherwise he wouldn't have a kingdom. It would just be him up there standing. But because of the open door and the first rapture, the Passover pilgrimage of the wise virgins into New Jerusalem, they're there, just like the ancient Levites and the sons of Aaron, when they were camped around closest to the tabernacle. That's what the wise virgins will be. The elders, the congregation of Philadelphia in New Jerusalem, camped around the Almighty and the Messiah. Okay, so there it is. Was set. And then days of Noah, it's two-phased, which is where the 1 year, the space of a year, because the 70th week started last year. See, on the new moon of the first month, he was bidden to make an ark, and then on that day, the earth became dry. So this is actually 2 years later. But the key is the ark was opened. Alright, and I believe that's a clue to the timing of the open door in heaven. The new moon of the first month, which is the 10th day of the first month. Okay? Because I don't believe that because he entered the ark in the second month on the 10th day, and then he packed it up for 7 days, and then the ark was closed on the 17th day of the second month, 1 year after this. However, I believe that was because that's when Adam and Eve were deceived in the garden. They were deceived in the second month on the 17th day, and that completed something. Alright? However, the new moon on the first month, I believe, is for the open door. Alright? The start of the 70th week, which began last year, was when the wise virgins were getting prepared and building the ark by being faithful to the Messiah and keeping the commandments and doing the will of the Almighty. That's how they built their ark during this year. Alright? And then when the Messiah opens the door, he recognizes the wise virgins because they built their ark. Alright? Because they have on their wedding gear. They're prepared. They're dressed for the occasion. Alright? And the wedding gear is obeying the commandments, doing the will of the Father, and being faithful to the Messiah. So there it is. New moon, 10th day of the first month, ark opened. Then the next thing that occurred was the Elisha slayed the prophets, the false prophets. Okay. After the open door, when the fire falls, so when the fire falls, which will be the open door in heaven, all the people saw it. Okay? Because I really believe, because of Revelation 5:13, Revelation 5:13, every created thing which is in heaven and on earth and under the earth and on the sea and all things in them I heard saying. I really believe everything, everyone acknowledges the crowning of the Messiah. And I believe that this is why the earth is coming to a standstill. It doesn't make sense in the natural, it's not rational in the natural, but when you look at it from the scriptural, the spiritual, it makes complete sense. That everything's being made to be still, to know who is the Most High King, the Most High Priest. To him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb be blessing, honor, glory, and dominion forever and ever. Okay? And I believe that that is exactly what occurs right here. Because Revelation 5 is a little bit after Revelation 4 with the open door in heaven. Because we have the open door in heaven right here in Revelation 4. Door standing open in heaven. Come up here. A throne was standing in heaven, but as we look in the interlinear in the Greek, it's a throne was set, which is the setup. And then this is the Ancient of Days taking his seat. And around the throne were 24 seats. I don't believe these are thrones like the Almighty's. It's more like seats. And then this is where the courts sit. See? Elders sitting. Okay? And we went over this before, that it's not 24. 24 is representing the complete whole of the 10,000, which we see over here. And so then this is where the Almighty, the Messiah gets presented to the Almighty. The Almighty deems him to be worthy and crowns him. And then here, this gives us the identity of the elders. Because it said, the number of them was. So who is it? It's the angels and the elders. Because we know that there's 4 living creatures, which are the 4 angels of presence. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Phanuel, I believe are their names. But it's the 4 angels of presence. Lion, red bull, face of a man, eagle. But they're 4 angels, okay? They're the 4 holy angels of the Almighty's presence. That's what the living creatures are. So we know there's only 4 of them. So that takes care of them. So now all we have is the angels and the elders. Well, the angels are the thousands of thousands that are serving before him. So that only leaves the myriads and myriads, which is the 10,000, 10,000s, to be the elders, which are the ones sitting. Okay? So then the fact that it says in 1 Kings 19:1 that he kills the prophets with the sword, this sword is pointing us to the second seal, which is the judicial punishment. The sword is not war. It's a weapon of judicial punishment that allows men to kill men. Meaning, I believe we're going to see a lot of people hanged, just like Haman. Alright? Then, after Elijah slays the false prophets, there is the sound of a roar. My computer's acting up. It's a little early to be acting up. See this? There is the sound of a roar of a heavy shower. And I believe that this is pointing us to the start of the Messiah's conquest. I heard one of the 4 living creatures saying with a voice of thunder, I come. And that's the beginning of his conquest. And like I said, the arrows are already shot out, as we see in Deuteronomy 32, the arrows and what they do. The arrows are actually the 3 angels of the presence, and then the bow is Michael, the commander. The Michael directs the arrows where to go, where to hit. Alright? But they're all fighting for the last stand, this final battle. And they're systematically undoing what took the enemy thousands of years to create. They're systematically undoing it in a couple short years. It's amazing. Then I believe when he tells his servant to go up and look at the sea, and to go back and forth 7 times is cryptic reference to the 7 seals. Alright. Then Elijah is empowered to move super fast to Jezreel. And Jezreel means the Almighty brings the harvest miraculously, which is the 3rd seal, the transfer of the wealth from the wicked to Israel, to the people of the Almighty, to the people of the Messiah. Alright? Which is the 3rd seal, which occurred in the time of Elisha, when the Armenians tried to wage war against Israel, but the Almighty scared them away, and they left all their wealth in this where they were camped, and then the Israelites were able to come, didn't have to lift a finger, and they got all the wealth, which to me is a transfer of wealth. And I believe we're going to see that really fast after the open door, after the first rapture. Alright? So, we got a few hints here, advanced intelligence, and we're told that when President Trump, which is Elijah, tweets on a Friday, and it starts with, "My fellow Americans, the storm is upon us," we will know that the 2nd seal is about to occur. Okay? Basically, we're going to know that it's time. The voice of thunder. Alright? And we've also been forewarned that there's going to be 10 days of darkness, which is more than likely going to be a government shutdown. I don't think it's going to be electrical darkness. I believe it's going to be kind of like a government shutdown and communication shutdown. And then during that time, the president's going to broadcast directly to us and tell us what's going on. So that way, the fake news, the propaganda will be completely shut out, and we'll be getting the direct information straight from him. And it's looking like that's supposed to occur from 4/1 to 4/10. Alright? Now, 4/1 would be right here. So, maybe the tweet will occur this Friday or next Friday, I don't know. But all this is occurring exactly when I've been saying that should be the time of the open door during the Passover pilgrimage, for the Passover pilgrimage. Alright? I believe this to be the highest watch right here, either the 17th day or the 10th day, depending on when, if it mirrors the wilderness, then it'll be 7 days after the throne is set up, which would put it at the 17th day, 4/3, which would be right in the middle of the days of darkness. But I'm basically watching from now until May 14th. Okay. Like I said, it's amazing how this coronavirus, crowning virus, has virtually brought the world to a standstill at the exact time that the Messiah is about to be crowned. It's completely amazing. A few other quick points. I don't know if I'll be able to get through them. My computer seems to be acting up, but I got to make a correction to the last video I did. I said Tyr fell around 2000 BC. It wasn't. I don't know why I had 2000 on my head in my brain, but it was actually around 600 BC. So I would say that Satan was probably cast from Eden between 1000 and 600 BC, because that's when, in here is when Tyr was at its height. So somewhere in there is when Satan was cast from Eden. Like I said, when he got kicked out of Eden, that's when he was stripped of the glory, just like Adam and Eve, just like the Antichrist, just like the 200 fallen ones. Once they get stripped of their glory, they are in flesh. And I truly believe that since that time, Satan hasn't been in flesh, and they are, him and his angels, however many there are, whether there's 10 or 100 or 1,000, I don't know the exact number. It says the 10 heads, but they just might be the leaders of 100, or I'm not sure. But anyway, they have been in flesh since around 1000 to 600 BC. And like I said, they are much more intelligent than humans. And humans went from horse and buggy to the moon in less than 70 years. So imagine what they built when they had about 3,000 years to do. Okay? Now, the demons, they're still in their energy form, so they can still go wherever. But the devil and his angels, they are no longer angels, they are in the flesh. And the only thing that they have is advanced technology. And another thing that I think I found out was I believe the mark of Cain is elongated skulls. Alright? That's what he got after he murdered his brother. An elongated skull. That's the mark of Cain, I believe. And when you look at ancient history, because if you see my last video, how I said Cain worked with the Antichrist, and they basically formed the first feudalism system, which is the Antichrist system, meaning there's an emperor, which would be the Antichrist, and then there's a ruling class, which would be the nobility, which at that time would have been the Cain's family. And then as you see further down the line, lots of the portraits and sculptures and carvings of the ancient rulers, they had elongated skulls, which I believe was Cain, the seed of Cain, the way of Cain, keeping it in his seed, in his family. And they even say that the ruling elite of today still have that via some Italian royalty in the medieval period, that you basically can trace all of European royalty back to that family. Now, what I think happened, and to me it makes complete sense, but I'm just kind of putting this out there. I'm not saying I believe it 100%, but it makes complete sense to me. Is so Cain's seed was probably concentrated in the Middle East, and when Satan got stripped of his glory and put into a flesh, so whether he had 10 other angels or 100 other angels or 1,000 or 10,000, I doubt it was 10,000, maybe 1,000. But whether it was 10, 100, or 1,000, think about it. They're in the flesh. They look nothing like humans. They're bigger than humans, stronger than humans, smarter than humans, but they don't look anything like humans. They can't just blend in as humans. So what do they do? They meet up with the seed of Cain. All right. Now, Tyre was founded by the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians were seafarers. All right. They were excellent at navigating the waters. Okay. So more than likely, the leaders of Tyre, the leaders of, whoever, but I would think that they met up with some of the seed of Cain within the Phoenicians, and they commanded them to take them to South America, or to Central America, to the Americas. All right, because look, they really don't have a good explanation about the Americas, because basically when the cavemen crossed over the Bering Strait and came down, I think the way it goes is that it's like they made it to here and then that was it. They can't explain all the advanced things that went on down here. All right. And what I believed happened is that the cavemen came over, and yes, they did make it down to here, but then there was the flood. Killed them. So now there's nothing over here for the most part. So what happens? The Phoenicians are like dominant prominent in the Mediterranean around 1600 BC. Satan gets stripped of his glory, put into a physical body. Makes a deal with the leaders of the Phoenicians, who more than likely have elongated skulls from the bloodline of Cain, and they set sail and come over to the Americas, start building a vast empire. That's where the pyramids come from, all throughout here. Alright? And they probably made their way down as the empire grew, made their way down, maybe to Peru or whatever, as they advanced in knowledge and power and manpower, etc. Made their way down to Peru, and then, a couple hundred years went by or whatever. Now they have an empire. They're advancing in technology. The devil and his minions are leading them. They're worshiping them as gods. And the seed of Cain, the elongated skull people, are the rulers, the nobility. And once they're advanced enough in technology, they head down to here and go underground. Because like I said, it's not hard to imagine. If you just look at humanity, we went from horse and buggy to the moon in less than 70 years. Now, Satan and his minions are way more intelligent than us, know about all kinds of things, know how to control and manipulate humans. So how easy would it be for them to commandeer the Phoenicians, come over here to the Americas and build an empire? Not hard at all. So, now, when you understand that Satan is in the flesh, and that more than likely the aliens that have been doing these abductions and all that is Satan and his minions, then it's not hard to understand why all these things are occurring. Because it doesn't make sense that humans would do it to themselves. Okay, like for instance, chemtrails. Spraying little nanoparticles of aluminum into the atmosphere to reflect the sun, that doesn't make any sense for humans to do that, since the sun is like the source of life on planet Earth. Alright? And plus aluminum is toxic when you take it in. So that doesn't make sense unless you understand that the alien agenda is Satan's agenda, because they are the same, and the idea is the control of humanity. Same thing with the demasculinization of humanity. Like, why would that be occurring? Well, when you understand that if humanity was demasculinized, it would be easier to control them, well then yeah, it makes sense. But it doesn't make sense that humans would be doing that to themselves. Same thing with like mass toxicity and drugs. Because actually pharma is a prophecy about the end time, that there would be a pharmacopa, which is pharmacy, drugs. So it's easy to understand all of this when you know that it's not humans calling the shots, that it's these. Now, I do believe I figured out the location of New Jerusalem, because I wasn't sure where it was, and I kind of stumbled upon it, and can't believe that I didn't notice it in the past. But I believe the current location of New Jerusalem is in the core of the sun. Why do I say that? Is because when you read Enoch, the book of Enoch, when the angels take him to speak with the Almighty, he says that they ascend up into space. Then he says that he enters into a vibrating flame. All right, and then another interpretation is tongues of fire. Okay, and then he says he's going through this fire, and that he comes to a crystal gate. And if you ever seen my other past videos, that I believe New Jerusalem, its shell is 200 feet thick of diamond. Now Enoch and others in Scripture say it's crystal, but I believe it to be diamond, and crystal is what they knew in their time. They probably didn't know about diamonds. But anyway, so he says that he comes to this gate in the middle of these tongues of fire and vibrating flame, and he enters into it, and there's the throne of the Almighty, and it's surrounded by flames, and I believe it's in. Now I personally believe that it's in the core of the sun. When you realize Eden is in the core of the earth, it makes perfect sense that New Jerusalem is in the core of the sun. All right, and it also makes more sense about Satan's agenda to block the rays of the sunlight, because then it's like he's blocking the energy of the Almighty being rayed to us via the sun. So when the sign of the Son of Man, which is the wormhole opening in Revelation 6:14, I believe it is, it's the wormhole opening for New Jerusalem to be birthed into near space. I believe it'll be coming from here. The Almighty will open a porthole, a wormhole, inside the sun, inside the core of the sun, where New Jerusalem's at, and then it will like come to near space, like right here, and that's how everybody sees it. Okay, so we are I don't know, I believe we're right on the precipice. I hope I'm right. I'm not trying to give false hope or anything like that, but to me the math's there. Confirmations are there, and now it's just a matter of when. Will it be the 10th day of the first month, or will it be the 17th day of the first month? But the open door. And like I said, I believe everybody on planet Earth, it's not going to go unnoticed. Everybody's going to recognize the crowning. Maybe not everybody will see the open door in heaven, but I do believe everybody will see the crowning in one way or another. So I just wanted to put that out there in case, because I've been having a lot of technical difficulties. As you can see, right now my computer's not responding. So I wanted to put this out there, and then I would like to do the 7,000 year timeline video before this Friday.